Our topic for the next activity is going to be mixed numbers, and we're using the 4th grade Georgia Standards of Excellence, and we're using Part B of the standard, which is to decompose a fraction into a sum of fractions with the same denominator in more than one way, recording each decomposition by an equation. Justify decompositions by using a visual fraction model. For example, 2 1/8 equals 1 plus 1 plus 1/8, or that equals 8/8 plus 8/8 plus 1/8. And our central question is, how can I represent a mixed number that is decomposed into a sum of fractions? Activity, students will be given 3 different sets of fraction models that they will use, since in our standard it specifically asks for students to use visual fraction models. And students will also be given a worksheet in which they will show another way to represent their decomposition of the different mixed numbers. The teacher can have students first just kind of play around and look at the different models and how they can create different fractions with them, just so they can get an idea of the different shapes and then what size pieces the students may think will correspond to each different set of mixed numbers. So number 1, students are going to be decomposing the fraction 2 5/8 into the sum of smaller fractions. And so all of the sums have to be equal to each other. So this means students are going to recognize that they're going to be needing 1/8 pieces because of our fraction right here, 5/8. And then students are going to know that because our whole number is 2, so they're going to need 2 wholes of 1/8 pieces. After students have kind of played around with the different pieces, they're going to recognize that they're going to need our blue triangle pieces in order to create the mixed number 2 5/8. So now after your students have visually represented their mixed number 2 5/8, your students will be able to see that they have 2 whole pieces and then 5 1/8 pieces remaining. So in each one whole, there is 8 eighths because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1/8, which is 8/8 plus 8 eighths plus another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 eighths. So now your students are going to come at the top, and beside number 1, they're going to write that 2 5/8 is going to equal 8 eighths plus 8 eighths plus the remaining 5 eighths. And so your students will be able to recognize that their 8 eighths plus 8 eighths gives them the 2 whole, and that you have your remaining 5 eighths left. Now for number 2, your students should be able to recognize that they're going to be using our blue square pieces. So your students were creating the mixed number 1 3/4, so the students should recognize that they should have 1 whole pieces and then 3/4 of a remaining piece. So students will be able to know that the sum of fractions that they're adding together that have the same denominator is going to be the 1/4 piece. And so now students know that they have 1/4 pieces here in their fraction model, and they should have 4 1/4 pieces, which creates the 1 whole, and students will have the remaining 3 1/4 pieces that creates the 3/4. So now your students should be able to think that they have 1, 2, 3, 4 4/4, which is 1 whole, plus another 1, 2, 3 fourths, which is 3/4. And now your students will just come to the top and they will write that they have their 4/4, which is their 1 whole piece here, plus another 3/4. And that equals 1 3/4 on the mixed number. So now for the last mixed number, which is 3 1/2, your students are going to be using our green pieces. And so they're going to recognize that their whole number is 3, and that their remaining fraction is going to be 1/2. So they're going to need several different 1/2 pieces that add together to give them the mixed number 3 1/2. Your students have visually represented their mixed number. They should have created 3 whole pieces and then have a remaining 1/2 piece. And so this gives them the mixed number 3 1/2. So students will know that they're adding a 1/2 piece plus another 1/2. So that's 2 halves, which equals 1 whole. And so they've done this 3 times, and then they have the remaining 1/2 piece. Now students will come up and represent that in the equation. And so they will have 2 halves plus 2 halves plus 2 halves. This gives us the 3 whole pieces, and then students will have the remaining 1/2 piece, so just 1/2. And so this equation is going to equal the mixed number 3 1/2. And so after your students have completed each problem, the teacher can go around to check to make sure that they are decomposing their mixed numbers correctly on the worksheet and that they're forming the correct fraction models. And so now your students have just followed the standard, which wanted them to represent the mixed numbers in 2 different ways. So one way was by writing it as the equation, which is what they did on the worksheet, and then they wanted them to use the fraction models, which is what they did here with the hands-on pieces.